Hello, patrons! How are we? Are we here? Can people see me and hear me? Just as importantly. How are we all doing? Please let me know if you can see and hear me. That would be wonderful. Woohoo! Margaret! Hello again. Me and Margaret did our Skype conversation today. It was very nice, it was too. All right, you see and hear me. So, what's going on in Patreon world? I think it's just you and me, Margaret. If anybody else is having trouble with the comments here, then I've put some instructions below the live stream window on the Patreon page. You've got to click the window that says the title of this video, which is it's the wrong date. It's Patreon Live May 3rd 7 p.m. So yeah, I forgot to update the date. Hey Rolf, how's it going? Great to have you here. Woohoo! Yay! Hey Jerry, fantastic. I've been listening to those videos you sent me. Watching them. I'm really enjoying them. So let's speak about that on Monday. All right. Cool. All right. Well, let me tell you what's going on in. It's all mirror imaged in the beehive. What is going on in the beehive is I can hear you, Rolf. I can read you anyway. Yeah. What is going on in the beehive is you might have seen the video, but today Mike put a lot of the trim around the floor to basically just to finish everything off, and we have a door frame. We have a door that locks securely, very importantly. So tomorrow there is the small matter of putting up a rail above the attic kind of lip. I'll show you when it's all finished exactly what I'm talking about. And then put a little bit of trim in the attic space, which is going to be used for storage. And then cut a library ladder, a rolling library ladder down to sides, and then we'll be done. So it's been an exciting day in the beehive. We've been working like busy bees. Hi Kathy, how's it going? Fantastic. So yeah, from now on I'm going to start these 5 minutes early, something like that, and it'll just be a blank screen or a screen saying starting soon, so you can expect that from now on. Dark, yes, exactly, storage, but most importantly a cat bed, and a way to make sure that anyone who orders any merch from my website will get Darwin's DNA. Very important DNA. Update on the shoulder. It's still not quite right. I think it's still going to be a couple of weeks, but I feel it getting better. And more importantly, or more for me maybe, I feel it getting better when I rest it, and when I don't rest it, such as I will show you with this hand rather than this hand, such as do a whole load of sanding, as a few of you have pointed out, is that really resting your arm, Paul, and doing a whole load of staining, then it doesn't really improve. So I think what I did is I pulled some muscle up here, so I think that's the problem. But I thank you for everyone's advice. Kathy gave me some great stuff when I saw her down in Florida, and that seems to have been really helping. So yeah, exactly. We're a little bit behind, but with the delay, Margaret. But I think you're preempting what I'm saying there. So yeah, so it all going well, and as I say, the studio's going really well. So yeah, all good news here. as you know, the first thing that I'm going to be doing in the studio, and this, fingers crossed, will be next week. I mean, I say fingers crossed. It should be finished tomorrow. But then again, you know, I've learnt with projects like this, just because it should be finished tomorrow, it doesn't mean to say that it will be finished tomorrow. The whole putting in of the air conditioning unit earlier this week, that was meant to be a 20-minute job. It was literally, we were connecting 2 wires, plop, plop, and like a hose thing into the outside unit. That was it. It took all night, because little did we know we had to actually drill through the chassis of the unit, and we had to what else did we have to do? Try and get this hose underneath it. There was just all sorts of things that we had to do, and to drill through it, we needed a very specific, was it 7/8 of an inch diameter hole. So we had to go to Ace Hardware to pick up the drill bit. We had to come back to find that we didn't have the piece that would fit it onto our drill, so we had to drive back to Ace, buy that, come back. So it literally was an all-night of a job. So I'm not anticipating we have the same problems tomorrow. But, yeah, there we go. Hopefully it should be finished tomorrow. Rolf says, getting older isn't helping the muscles and bones either. You might have a point there, Rolf. Although I must say, when I was in my 20s, I had more injuries than my 30s. So in my 20s, I used to injure myself on a regular basis. When I was at college, it probably had to do with the fact that I was practicing an awful lot. But when I was at college, I had a lot of injuries. So I'm kind of used to what an injury feels like. I'm used to if it's if I think it's, you know, a serious injury, if it's getting better. So yeah, I'm used to the things that you should and shouldn't do, like sanding and staining. So yeah, there you go. All the things that I do and I shouldn't do. So yeah, my friend Mike, I've been working in the garage with him. He's doing most of it. He's just having a baby. His wife's pregnant, due in July, and he's a fellow musician as well. Hence his, you know, interest in the studio. And as a thank you for his work, I gave him a gift as well. But as a thank you for his work, I wanted to. I was thinking about writing a lullaby for his child, Zoe. Writing and recording it, and it can be one of the first things that I record in there. And I think that'd be quite nice for a thing to do for him. And the idea behind it, me and Mike were talking, and we've been kind of listening to YouTube stuff and while we've been working. And one of the things that we were talking about is this kid on YouTube with incredible perfect pitch, and literally, you know, just if you play any cluster of notes, this kid will just say exactly what each of those notes are and just rattle them off like that. He's unbelievable. So yeah, perfect pitch is, for anybody who doesn't know, is the ability to recognise any single tone and know exactly that's an A flat, or that's slightly sharp F sharp and things like that. It's just incredible recognition of audio frequencies. And there's this. I can put a link to it. I'll put a link to it when you download this series, this package of live streaming sessions. But basically, his dad is on YouTube, and he's talking about how his kid has perfect pitch and why, and how he taught him perfect pitch. And he claims his theory is that all babies start off with perfect pitch, and the world around them teaches them to listen in a way that doesn't give them perfect pitch. Because when we play or listen to music, most of the music we listen to is tonal music, which means it's all in one key. it all centered around a certain one note. So this is the key. This is the key of A. Okay, so and basically all of these notes all pull towards the A. They all have some sort of the root note, the A in an A major scale, or in the key of A major. It always it's almost like the sun of the A major solar system, and all of the other notes have some sort of gravitational pull towards the sun. They're all being attracted to it, so that you only really feel settled when you land on the note of A, which is the root note. So you see for there, none of these feels settled until we go home. We wouldn't want to finish that progression on any other chord other than that. And this series of relationships between notes means that whenever you listen to a piece of music, a piece of tonal music, you're always subconsciously or consciously, depending on how well trained your ear is, listening out for these relationships. So this, to me, always wants to pull back to a ba-da, ba-da. It's always wanting to pull somewhere. Okay, so and every single note has this. Every single note in a scale has this relationship with other notes. And this guy's theory is that because babies are exposed to a lot of this tonal music, all centering around one root note, what happens is us as infants in the first 6 months of our lives, we forget what the notes sound on their own, what the notes sound like in isolation, and we latch onto this what we call relative pitch, i.e. hearing every note relative to another note. And we latch onto this idea of relative pitch, and we lose our ability to recognise notes in their own right. We can only recognise the relation of one note to another note, but we don't know what that note is. It's almost like having a row of houses, a street with no street numbers, and you don't know what any one house is called or the number of any one house. You can just say, well, it's opposite the one that's 2 down, and on a giant infinite street, you'd only be able to figure out each house where each house is relative to where other houses are, rather than them all having infinite numbers, them all being numbered, and you can say that is house 101, that is house 103. The fact that they're next door, it doesn't matter, because you can just go to 103. You don't need to know where 101 is. And it's the same with relative pitch. I feel like I'm talking about this for a long time, but we got into it. It's leading somewhere, don't worry. So the same is true with relative pitch. You're only ever recognising one note as a relationship to another. So here, I'm recognising this as chord 5, as Rolf is talking about, and that is because it's the fifth chord of the key. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm not hearing that as being an E major chord. There's nothing about that that's saying to me this chord is E major. It's firmly rooted in 5. So I'm just hearing it as the 5th of the key. Okay. And obviously it's not always going to sound like the 5th of the key, because if I play, we're going to change key to B major. Now if I play that same E major chord in B major, it no longer sounds like a 5. It sounds like the 4. This now sounds like the 5. The F sharp major sounds like a 5. And this is the difference. So people with perfect pitch would just hear that chord, and they might not even think about where it is in the key. They just think that's an E chord. It's an E major chord, and it sounds the same. that E major chord sounds the same if it's in the key of A, if it's in the key of E, if it's in the key of B, whatever, in whatever key it's in, it'll sound the same to them. So, the point of me whittering on about this relative stuff for 10 minutes now, you can fast forward through all of that stuff when you listen to the replay, is that babies, the theory is, they're not born necessarily hearing this relative, this relation of notes and chords to each other. They're born hearing that as E major. They don't know to call it E major, but it's a specific sound, and they're born knowing that sound, and that is called perfect pitch. And the theory is, this guy's theory, and it seems to have worked for his son, is if a baby is exposed to a lot of non-tonal music, so a lot of music that can be either in different keys, changes keys a lot, so it kind of, it can do that, but then it can also, and then move like that, and so it's changing keys a lot. Or the other thing is it can be in what we call atonal music, which means that it's in no key at all. You know, every single note in a piece of atonal music carries its own strength. There's no root note where you'd say that is where I want to finish this piece. Atonal music, I'll try and do an atonal chord progression. Easier said than done, probably, but. See, you're not really hearing any one of those notes as, that's the end. You could finish on, or you could equally finish on, you know, it's all equal. So this idea of all notes being equal in a progression, if a baby is exposed to that in their first 6 months, if that's the sort of music they hear, this guy reckons that baby will maintain or retain the perfect pitch that they're born with. So, obviously, all nursery rhymes, all lullabies are very, 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 very tonal. They stick to the notes of the major scale because, you know, babies are simple creatures, or so we label them, and so we give them the most simplest music possible. And so it's all very tonal, and if this guy is right, it's the worst thing we can possibly do to develop a baby's ear for perfect pitch. So, which brings me on to what I'm going to do for him in my studio, or what I'm planning. I was thinking of writing an atonal lullaby. And if you're familiar with atonal music, it could result in this child's turning out to be a psychopath. But it'll be a psychopath with perfect pitch. So there you go. All right. So there you go. Hey, Eric. How's it going? Sorry, I just saw you appear there. All right, so there you go. So that's what I'm thinking of doing. So the first thing I'm going to do for in the studio is the Debussy Melier thing. I'm itching to get that down, and then the next project before July 18th, I think it is the due date. She can't come early. July 18th. I'm going to do an atonal lullaby for Zoe, Mike's child. And of course I will be sharing that with all of you. You know, if you've got the download stuff, then you'll be getting that as a download, and I'll be making some videos about it. I think it'll be a fun project, and also it's a very, very interesting way of composing, because all music theory as we know it goes out of the window. You know, music theory is a lot of music theory is about how notes, the relationships between notes, and you know, how they go together for different dramatic effect. And a lot of it is to do with these relationships and these pulls, these gravitational pulls that happen between notes. A lot of music theory is talking about that. So atonal music uses some quite abstract theory and abstract methods, which I'll tell you all about when we get to it. It's really fascinating stuff, to make sure that all of these relationships are broken. There we go. I'm going to shut up about atonal music now, because I've just done an entire live stream on atonal music. Rolf, you may well be right. I really don't know. So few people have it, and who knows? It might not be that simple, but I'm going to give Zoe the best shot I can give her. Oh, is that right? Just 4 days short of the ultimate birthday. Well, maybe she'll come out 4 days late. So yes. So anybody got any questions? I know I was chatting to Eric earlier. Eric, I saw that you sent me a message, but sorry, I didn't have chance to check it, because I was getting ready for this streaming session and starting the stream. But yes, please let me know your question. One of the questions Eric was asking, and I might do an entire article on this, or an entire video on this, explain it to everybody. But one of the questions that Eric was asking was about, if I remember rightly, was about arranging a piece. And he was asking about what, well, I don't know, you'd probably be able to phrase it better, Eric. Hey, Terry, how's it going? Good to see you here, and good to see you in the chat. I'm glad everyone's getting used to this chat, because it's, you know, that extra step. It's not necessarily intuitive, so hence us all trying to chat in the messages on the first week. So yeah, Eric was asking about what piece makes a good arrangement, why I would choose a piece maybe, or how to go about choosing a piece, or how to go about arranging a piece that was written on another instrument, for, in my case, guitar. Well, the answer to that is that basically, when I hear a piece, here we go. Eric's just asked. Thanks, Eric. How do you pick the pieces you adapt, and how do you approach it? Perfect. See, I used a paragraph to say what Eric said in a sentence. Okay, so how do I choose the pieces I adapt? I can, when I listen to them, when I've been listening to a piece, I get an idea that something might work well on guitar for various reasons. So, for example, one of the pieces I suggested to Carl that we do, just looking around for a guitar pick. I don't have a guitar pick here, but I can do it without a guitar pick. Was Welcome Back. Welcome Back, Carnival 9. So it starts off like this. Sorry, it doesn't sound great because I'm not using a pick. I'll clean it up a little bit by doing that. So the reason why I was listening to that piece, and the reason why I thought that's going to be good is because I heard Keith Emerson doing this chord change, and this chord change is an A flat. Oh, sorry, a D flat first. D flat going to an A flat. So I heard, and he's playing this arrangement of notes. And actually, Margaret takes guitar lessons with me, and we've just been doing a load of Queen stuff. and we were talking about this being Brian May's favourite 2-chord trick. You'll hear it all the time. So so Hammer to Fall, it's also in. It's also in We Will Rock You. That's the We Will Rock You solo. So this is a really, really guitar-y thing. I think it's in some Motown stuff like. It's very, very guitar-y. This idea of going to a chord. This would be the 1 chord. This would be the 5 chord, and this would be the 1 chord, or this would be the 1 chord, and this would be the 4 chord. So I heard Keith doing that at the start of, and I recognised those two. I recognised the relationship between those 2 chords. I just thought, that's the Brian May thing, or that's the Long Train Running thing, or that's the whatever else. It's really common. Keith Richards does it. Start Me Up. There you go. Monday Monday. So many songs use it. Yeah, absolutely. So I heard that thing, and I just thought, well, I can hear that that's what Keith's doing on the keyboard, and it's that arrangement of notes. So I know straight away I'll be able to play that intro, and it'll sound really good. And then it was a short step of, well, I've started doing this like this, this style, so I just need to work out how to. So that's kind of based on his keyboard part. In fact, I think that might just be exactly his keyboard part. I think it is. I think it's just what he's playing on there. But thankfully, his keyboard part is following the shape and the melody of what Greg's doing, the melody. Exactly the same thing. So I'm doing similar things there. So there, it's just a case of I could hear that bit was going to work because it was so guitar-y. I knew exactly how I'd approach that. If you take a piece like one of the Chopin etudes, Etude Number 8, I did a video about this before. I was listening to that, and it's got this octave thing going on. Let me turn that up. Don't know if you can hear that, if that's loud enough. We've got no neighbours here, so we're good. Etc. When I heard that, I was listening to that for a while. I was listening to I've always listened to those Chopin etudes for a while. Since I've been in my teenage years. One of my favourite pianists, one of my favourite musicians, George Seifert, he had an incredible version of those Opus 10 etudes. So I always thought about doing them on the guitar. And I could hear what was going on there was that octave principle that we talked about before. So you take one thing, and then you play it down the octave, and play it down the octave. And using this tapping thing is very easy to string those together. So I knew that it should be doable based on that. So I kind of had the idea of how it was going to work on guitar. I could hear it on guitar, and I could see how it was going to work before I actually chose the piece. That was why I chose the piece. Same with the Beethoven Moonlight. I could kind of see the technique that I was going to use. Things like Clair de Lune. So that's a little bit different because I use different techniques in different areas of the tune. And again, it was a case of I can hear this is very chordy. So this is all going to be, I didn't know that I was going to be tapped there. So this is kind of a tapping thing. And that just seemed to be, that seemed to work. And then, and when I heard this bit, I could tell that it was going to be finger picking. And all of this section was going to be the same. Okay, so that was, it all is pretty much the same. And then when I got onto the next section, I could tell that there needed to be a different approach. There needed to be some movement, because you have these kind of arpeggios happening underneath. And the arpeggios actually are just ascending, so I don't know what it is exactly, but say it's something like that, I don't know. Instead of that, I'll just play. And I knew I was going to have a melody going on. And then I figured out, well, it was going to be easier to play this with this hand, so I can play the melody here. So it, you know, before I chose it, I realised how I was going to approach all of the different sections and why it was going to work. So this became. It's been a while since I've played this, etc. And the same for the other Debussy pieces. So the arabesque, this clearly was just some sort of octave tapping thing, and this was going to be split up into two hands. So I'm kind of hearing this before I'm playing it. It's same with this, and this is Dr. Gradus ad Parnassum. Now, when I first heard that, it reminded me of a Joe Satriani piece called Midnight, which probably can't remember to play. It's something like something like that. That's it. It's something like that. He uses this sort of. He uses that sort of tapping, and it's basically over and over and over again to create the notes of chords. And I just thought, oh, well, that Dr. Gradus thing kind of reminds me of the Joe Satriani tapping. You know, I wonder if I could ever arrange it and do it in that style. So I had a go at it, and sure enough, it works. It worked quite well. So there you go. So that's how I approach arranging things. It's really a case of I hear a piece of music and I can imagine how it will work on guitar, and I can kind of get a picture of how it will work on guitar. Obviously, arranging with Carl, slightly different, because he sometimes comes to us and says, can we do this? Can we do this piece? And that's a case of, well, I need to find a way to solve this problem, rather than that would work well on guitar, let's do that. Sometimes it happens that way. I've suggested a bunch of songs that have worked well because I know they work on guitar. Ones that spring to mind are Welcome Back, as I say, because of that Brian May thing. Another thing was Knife Edge. I kind of started messing around with. I just it's one of those things I won't be able to play unless I. Oh, it starts off with an A chord, so. heard that. Well, this is around that A chord. It's a kind of similar to the Little Wing thing. That sort of thing. But he's decorating chords. So I kind of got that under my fingers and kind of was hearing that, and then from there I realised, yeah, the rest of it's going to be possible to do it in that sort of style. So I suggested that to Carl. Another thing that I suggested to Carl, and this actually started out as, I said, I think for my new solo spot, I'm going to do the intro for Trilogy, and then you guys can come and join me for the rest of Trilogy. And I'd worked out a few licks. And then I pretty soon realised that this could be really pretty if it was actually me and Simon playing it, and we were kind of. It was a way of adding interest, really. So rather than playing that sort of stuff twice, why not do question and answer? So I got the question and answer thing in my mind, and then. But again, it all came from me thinking, yeah, this would work on guitar, because I can see how it would work. I can see that intro piece, the intro lick, is the octave principle. I could use that. So a lot of it happens like that. So there you go. I hope I didn't waffle too much. I hope that was informative and that answered your question, Eric. All right. How does the version of Clair de Lune differ between your record and what you play on the live shows? Well, at the live shows, what I do is I do a medley of First Arabesque into Clair de Lune, and I get up to. I get up to there in the Clair de Lune. So before it would go into the. And so instead of going into that, I go straight back into the rest of the arabesque. And I had a cheeky little arpeggio here. And then back to the end. Forgive me my out of tune G string. So that's what I do live with that piece. And actually, my album version, when I play the full piece of Clair de Lune live, my album version does differ. Because on my album, I went after the. Which way is it? That's it. It goes back to kind of a reharmonized version. Which is all arpeggios, broken up chords. On my album, I just go back to the intro. And that's one of the reasons why I've always wanted to put it on another album, because I just thought, I really like that reharmonized bit at the end. very subtle, but it's really good. I really like that. So yeah, so that's one big difference as well. I like it. Guitar-y, my new favourite word. Absolutely. That is a word. It's might be your favourite. It's probably my most used word. All right. Well, yeah. Glad you enjoyed that. If you got any more questions, then please let me know. If you're thinking of some questions, I'm just going to talk about a few other pieces that I've arranged. So there's a Chopin Prelude. I wanted to play this because it was a beautiful piece. But I realised that I had a look at this with tapping, but I realised that it was just going to sound more lyrical if I played it. Etc. So I've not done that, not played it for a while, but yeah, the whole point of that is I kind of spotted the pattern of, well, it's all descending. It's whatever it is. But all of these chords are descending all the time, and it's kind of descending one note at a time. So that's really easy to do on a guitar, just going down the neck like this, and the melody, thankfully, does the same. So yeah, so that kind of, I could hear that it was going to lend itself well to guitar. Another piece, this is a piece that I first started looking at when I was probably about 18, and I did an arrangement for 7-string guitar, and it was, am I in the right key? That's the right key. See, I do have perfect pitch of kind. I could tell it didn't sound right. Not played it for a while, but it's a piece called Fantasy Impromptu, and again, I'd always listened to that piece. I loved it. I heard it when I was at my first music college, and there was this pianist. It's probably about 16, and there was a pianist playing it. And I was like, wow, one day I want to play that on guitar. I can hear how that'll work in my, really, I suppose, unexperienced guitar way. I could hear, and I kind of had an image of my hands doing this, even though I'd not really seen anybody doing that. So I set about doing it, and at that age it proved too difficult. And then actually, I was when that arrangement came together, and I was actually 3 years ago, we played the Cayman Islands. We played this incredible place in the Cayman Islands, and actually, one of our hosts there, Andrea, is on this page. And this was a piece that I returned to that arrangement, and I spent a good few hours on my balcony every day practicing this arrangement. So when I play this, when I play the Fantasy Impromptu, I think of Cayman Islands. So there you go. All right, some more questions. Fantastic. Here we go. All right. All right. How my approach to composing? That's not a broad question at all, because I think I can sum it up in a very specific way. I think I've composed in many different forms, and using many different methods, and from just, I've got a melody in my head, I want to turn it into a song. I find that is the hardest place to go from, or just to sit down and I am going to write a composition. It's such a blank canvas that it's almost terrifying that I could write anything that I want. And I've found it's kind of like a painter sitting down to, you know, in a black room and saying, I'm going to paint anything I want. Well, it's just, are you going to paint a landscape? Are you going to paint a portrait? Is it going to be abstract? Is it going to be whatever? So for me, I found my most successful compositions is, and I've learnt this from doing kind of composition briefs through working through magazines and stuff, is when I've been asked write something specifically in the style of, in the case of the guitar magazines, that guitarist. So I did for probably about 3 years. I did a series of in the style of, probably more actually, in the style of pieces with famous guitarists, famous bands, that sort of thing. And the trick was, they didn't want to pay copyright, but they still wanted it to say this is a Dave Gilmour piece, or this is a Nuno Bettencourt piece, or whatever. So you had to kind of summarize his style, but it had to be an original composition, and that was a really good kind of apprenticeship into composition, because what it meant is I was in much the same way as when I do an arrangement. I was finding a solution to a problem in a way. You know, I had a very tight constraint in which to work, and it really helped because I didn't have this blank canvas in front of me. I didn't have this bewilderingly free space to fill. I had to do something exactly like this. So I found that in terms of composing something, that's a big help to say I am going to compose specifically this. And I've been reading Beethoven's biography. I know a lot of people. I've told a lot of people about this, but one of the big things that he used to do when he started off composing is he used to specifically compose in the style of not just another composer, but another piece. He used to take Haydn's string quartets. He used to take Mozart's piano sonatas, and he used to write pieces specifically based on them. So you can have a look at the pieces that he wrote at the early years, and you can take a Mozart piece or you can take a Haydn piece, and you can say that this definitely came from that. You know, it's this kind of theme. This theme acts in the same way, and he's got the same types of modulation coming through, and then you've got a quiet bit, and then you've got this, and you've got that. So that was kind of his training ground for becoming Beethoven. You know, and I can really see how that's really useful. So that was kind of my idea of the composing in the style of Debussy and the Impressionists, you know, the impressions of the Impressionist type thing. Because I do have somewhere to start. I can say, well, you know, you can tell what's going on in this piece. You've got two arpeggios, kind of ninth arpeggios. All right, so you've got that. So I could do something similar there, and then you've got this. You've got that sort of thing. So it'd be easy to come up with something that kind of mimics all of those different sections, kind of follows them in shape, but it's an original composition. So that is so that is one approach to composition, and I think it's a useful one. All right, Rolf is asking, Paul and Simon, when do we go on tour, with or without a drummer? I am hoping the answer to that is December. I don't have a firm date. I don't have a firm schedule yet, but I'm hoping me and Simon are going to get out again, probably without a drummer. Maybe with a drummer, who knows? We'll see. But I think it's going to be in December. Okay, I approach creating a drawing looking at an emotional idea I want to express. Oh, okay, yeah. Well, that sounds a similar thing. Eric, I'd love for you to make a road trip. You'd be very, very welcome. I would love, and I think we should have some sort of Patreon patron badges so we can meet up. I know when I was down in Florida, there was quite a few. There was Kathy, there was Caroline, there was quite a few people at the same shows, quite a few patrons at the same shows, and yeah, we all met together and it was great. So yes, let's do it. Have car will travel. Fantastic. Well, I'd love to be playing the stuff that I'm recording and writing for you guys. So a tour of that stuff would be amazing. All right. Yes, the fear of the blank page. Exactly. Update on Nosferatu. Okay. Nosferatu, for those of you who don't know, it's a silent movie, 1922 vampire movie, and I wrote the first movement for it. And the reason I wrote the first movement for it was really because me and Simon were going out on tour. I wanted to dabble into the world of silent movie stuff. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a big learning curve, and I will finish it. I'm sure I will finish it. In fact, that might be on the cards for one of the studio things happening soon. But in terms of my solo shows, I've really found that I've been doing quite a few solo shows around here with, well, some of them have been with silent movie stuff, and I found that the shorter pieces work really well, and they're manageable, and people can kind of dip in and out of them. So and it works really well, just me and my guitar. So for now, I'm going to be focusing on the Melier pieces, but I will certainly visit Nosferatu and finish it probably when we have a tour and when we can say, right, we're going to go out on tour and we're going to play it, and I'll finish it for that. Yeah. A family get-together. That sounds great. We should do it. We should absolutely do it. Yeah. All right. Well, this was really fun, guys. I hope I didn't talk your ears off too much. I hope there was enough examples and I didn't bore you too much. So I'll see you next week. I know you're about 10 seconds behind me. But yeah, any questions? I really appreciate you asking questions. Thanks for all the great questions. Thanks, Eric and Rolf and Kathy and Margaret and everyone else who asked the questions. Sorry, I'm sure there was a lot more questions. But I really enjoyed it. It was really interesting. I hope you enjoyed it too. Fantastic. Oh, that's good to know, Eric. Fantastic. Great. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. I'll see you all on Patreon. You'll have an update tomorrow of The Beehive. And as I say, I'm hoping that after this weekend, I'm going to have everything set up in there and I'll be good to go. And Katie, my wife, is perhaps hoping more than anyone, because it'll mean that all of my crap that I am filling the house with will go into the studio. Just before I go, I wanted to show you I have made some purchases for our Patreon adventure, for our live streaming. See, they're not even unwrapped yet. It's so new. I've got this fancy kind of old-fashioned, really good sounding radio style mic, so I shall be using that for lovely audio for our live streams. I've got a few more mics. This is for electric and acoustic guitars. And here's one for recording vocals for when I record your Thank You Patrons song. So I better get cracking on that. We're up to, I think, is it 78 on the page now? We're getting there. We're very close to 100. So me. I better get my vocal cords in tune. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. You're the best. I really appreciate it. All right, speak to you soon. Cheers. Bye.